We're starting the show with the very sad news that singer Liam Payne, who shot to fame in the British boy band One Direction, has died at the age of 31 after falling from the third floor of a hotel in Buenos Aires.
Really shocking news we're waking up to this morning. The Argentinian authorities have said that they will conduct an autopsy and investigate the circumstances surrounding his tragic death.
Tearful fans have been gathering outside the hotel to mourn the death of the singer.
That audition we showed you, of course, was the first time we saw Liam when he auditioned for the X Factor. He was a boy, he was just 14 years old. You can hear what a wonderful voice he had and how he charmed the judges in that first appearance. He leaves behind, of course, a 7-year-old son, Bear, that he shares with his former partner and X Factor judge, Cheryl. We're joined now by somebody who knew him very well, of course, Dermot, one of our family members at this morning. Morning, Dermot.
Morning,
Thank you
Dermot.
for joining us.
Morning.
I woke up this morning and saw the news and my jaw dropped. I couldn't quite believe what had happened. And you knew him. You were there that day when he auditioned. I wonder how you're feeling, mate.
Obviously very sad, and your hearts go out to his family, because when you do X Factor, you get to know the families sort of so well in such a short period of time. And his mum and dad were just adorable. They were very kind of proprietorial over him. They were never pushy. This was very much his dream. He just loved to sing. I mean, you just saw that audition there, and, you know, he was rough around the edges and stuff, but this 14-year-old turning up doing Sinatra, and you could tell, and, you know, no 14-year-olds turned up doing Sinatra. And, you know, he was 14 at the time. Simon quite rightly made the decision that he wasn't ready. He came back 2 years later and was still great, but Simon and Nicole then put together One Direction, and that's kind of where he flew, really. He was I haven't seen him for a while. Last also actually was Soccer Aid. He came a couple of years ago and played. He was brilliant. But he was always, he was kind of both wise and sort of a young soul at exactly the same time. He had this kind of old bones about him because he, you know, like his musical taste and so forth. And yet he was always quite beautifully wide-eyed about the world and his place in it and fame. I mean, it's such a huge amount of pressure to be put on young shoulders. But yeah, I was just thinking about this last night, because I came in last night and saw the news, and I just thought, well, he's been not just famous, he's been, you know, he's had worldwide fame for basically half his life, which is an incredible amount of time for that level of pressure, I suppose.
I think the other thing, Dermot, that you can't help but think, well, I know I feel this, and I'm sure you do, and Ben actually, he's got a little boy as well that's going to be left now without a dad, you know?
Of course. I mean, and you know, I thought of his family, and I thought of his son, and then I thought of his parent. I mean, no parent should have to bury their son or their daughter. So, you know, obviously our thoughts and our prayers and our candles are half lit for his family. I mean, you know, that goes without saying.
I watched a wonderful interview that Lorraine did with him back in about 2008. It was on Lorraine's show, and she was on when he came onto GMTV, so even before Good Morning Britain. And he was talking about how he doesn't really get nervous. He never got nervous because the thing he just loved doing was singing. Yeah. And singing was his happy place. And I think we can all forget, can't we, when we understand the construction of a boy band and they go off around the world, just how talented they are as singers and how talented he was as a musician.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was kind of, to start with, when Simon and Nicole kind of put the band together, he was very much kind of like, to start with, he was the singer. And the boys all, you know, him and Harry basically, and then the boys kind of learnt their trade around. And the most amazing thing about One Direction, I mean, you can see them there. They were, it's hard to sort of overstate this. They were the least manufactured boy band you could ever imagine, because they got chucked together and they went away and they worked really hard before judges' houses, and they were, you know, they ended up kind of, I think, staying around one of the parents' houses and just rehearsing all the time. But from the start, from the get-go, they were, we can't dance, we're not going to wear the same clothes, we have kind of similar taste in music here or there. So we've got this kind of quite narrow Venn diagram as to the music they all loved. And that's kind of, and I went to see them live. You know, obviously saw loads on the X Factor when you know, they were really successful. But I've seen them live in a concert a couple of times, and you realise that's their beauty. They could have just ambled around the stage and, but they just knew each other so well. They were such a brilliant band, and they evolved so well together, and they meant so much to so many people, especially young girls that are of such a formative age. And Liam was kind of central to that, and he did have and always had this unbelievable kind of soulful voice, like that belied his age, really.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why the fans love them so much, is that real sense of authenticity. Yes. And the fact that they didn't try and be anybody else. I mean, there's going to be so many heartbroken girls now.
Yeah, and that's a real testament to that band, and it's a testament to Simon as well, because you could tell from the outset that they were quite strong-willed, and they were very kind of adamant as to the kind of music they wanted to make, but also the people they were. They didn't want to conform. They didn't want to sit on stools. They didn't want to wear the same clothes. I think quite quickly there was a respect on both sides, and that's why I think they had that unbelievable longevity for a band that were chucked together. They worked, they became brothers very, very quickly. And it's easy to say that, but there's a wonderful quote in that One Direction film years ago where Louis Tomlinson's mum, who sadly passed, she just said, "My son went off to boot camp and sort of never came home. And he went off a child. And then the next time you see them, they are notorious and famous." And that's, it's a huge amount for a poor family to have to process. And so in many ways, these boys were kind of each other's family.
Yeah.
And they were so unbelievably tight. They were a brilliant band.
I guess it makes the fracture within that band, when they were that tight and they had so much purpose together, all the more difficult to carry when eventually you go on and they all split and go and do their own things individually. Dermot, thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing some thoughts. Really appreciate it. It's an emotional time for everybody that worked alongside him, and you knew him well, so we really value it.
You know what? I mean, so just to finish, the amount of people I've spoken to or text over the last kind of 12 hours who worked on the show and felt a real sense of protectiveness, I suppose, and a proprietoriality over that band. Like in many ways, we sort of grew up with them, and hold them close tonight, people, and sending all our love to friends and family. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Dermot. Thank you. They were just little lads, weren't they?
They were just little lads that transcend. They did everything that everybody has a dream about doing. They became internationally renowned, global superstars. I mean, you were in America. They made it in America.
Yeah,
they did that thing that's so difficult to do.
Yeah, it was like Beatlemania there.
Wasn't it?
Yeah,
extraordinary.
Sure. We've actually got Sean Welby, who's able to join us this morning as well. She's live from the Capital studio. Good morning, Sean. What do you know so far?
Oh, it's been such a different show this morning on Capital Breakfast. We're live from 6 a.m. in the morning, and usually it's our job to deliver all the fun and upbeat things that are happening. And today it's been a devastating, tragic start where we had to deliver the worst news about, someone that we've lost way too soon, way too young, a guy that a lot of our listeners have grown up with from the age of 14. They're now in their 30s and remembering all the good times. And what has been incredible this morning is just hearing all the stories. We've cried, we've laughed, we've had people, from Wolverhampton messaging saying, "Oh my God, I remember him and his family at the school gates." There's people that remember him from holiday camps where he did talent shows, and he stood out even from a very young age, that he had a real talent, and he lit up a room, and he really was a force to be reckoned with. And here at Capital, he's been such a big part of our lives. I've interviewed him for years. That band was huge, and then they went solo, and it was always clear that he had such a respect for the One Direction lads, and he was so passionate about what he did, and his energy was infectious. He was always up for a laugh. We could throw anything at Liam, and he would always want to do it with a cheeky smile and a spring in his step. And I think what's been incredible today is just seeing the fans coming together, supporting each other. We've had listeners from all over the world, from Brazil, from the Netherlands, from America, all just checking in on each other. And then to counter that, we've had, you know, at 6 a.m. this morning, a trucker listening in his van saying, I wasn't a huge One Direction fan, but I can't help but be moved and affected by this story because he's gone too soon. And I think anyone that you lose at such a young age, you can't help but feel just devastated. It's tragic. It's awful for the family, the friends, his little boy. Your mind goes through all those things. And then today, this morning, on a show that's normally about, you know, pop culture and fun and energy, we've all been sharing stories about loss, and it's been a real bonding moment this morning with us and our listeners, because we've all come together, and it's triggered a lot of sadness for a lot of people listening, whether they've lost their own children or family members. I think this is the thing, when you start opening up and talking about loss, what I would say is it's been a very healing process this morning, and we've all managed to bond over something, despite it being tragic circumstances. It's been an honour to sort of be able to be part of that today, and I'm very grateful for everyone who's been listening to our show today and come together.
Sian, I think it's really, you make such a good point about the fact that their music is part of the fabric of many radio stations, not least Capital, of course. You'll have been playing One Direction endlessly for the joy of your listeners as well. And you got to meet the boys. I got to meet them on a number of occasions, individually or together. You always had such a laugh with them as well when they sort of were off camera particularly. But what about you personally, your experiences of chatting and interviewing Liam? You touched on sort of the things you could throw at him, but what was he like? What do you think his legacy will be?
Do you know what? You never know who's watching this show right now or listening that might be close friends and family. And I think when you lose somebody, it's amazing how many other people will come forward and tell you how incredible they really were. And I hope that it can offer some form of comfort, that we have had thousands of messages today saying how Liam Payne and those One Direction boys got people through some of the toughest times in their lives. We've had teenage girls, teenage boys get in contact saying if it wasn't for their music, if it wasn't for those lyrics, if it wasn't for those concerts, I might not have got through the dark times I was going through. And what you realise with fan bases of bands like One Direction is it forms lifelong friendships. And some people have best friends now because of that band. They met them at a concert, they met them on Twitter, they met them through fan sites and websites. And so I just want to sort of repeat that and say that's my memory of Liam is just a wonderful, kind energy that was very passionate about what he did, and he's helped and inspired so many people in his short time on this earth. He's done some wonderful things, and there's a lot of people that he's, you know, without him probably even realising, he's really helped. And one thing I always knew, and it was very clear with Liam, he loved his fans. And he really did. And he admitted that at times he's been and felt very alone. And actually, it was sometimes the fans that brought him out of a dark time. So yeah. I think that's a positive message from today.
Well, look, Sian, thank you for joining us this morning and sharing some thoughts and memories and what you guys have been talking about on The Breakfast Show. It's good to see you. We're now joined here in the studio by Ashley James and Nick Ferrari. Morning, Ashley. Morning, Nick. Morning. Nick, I wonder if this has resonated with any of your listeners this morning.
Totally, and I'm on the studio below Sian, down there at LBC, and I want to pick up actually on something that Kat said, which when they came to the US, it was almost like Beatlemania. This was the last big band, wasn't it? If you think, what has a band been? There hasn't been anything the size of One Direction. And what struck me further to what I just heard from Dermot, and so what I do is I can't play music on LBC, just to remind everybody we're about news and comment. And the age range of people that have been calling in or sending texts or emails or whatever, social media, that's what I want to bring to this conversation, because I'm not going to pretend that I knew him anything like as well as all of you, but what I can see is the reaction, because that's what we've been talking about. And it has been from people who were teenagers or even younger at the time, all the way up to their granddads and their grandmas, because this was the band that resonated through the whole ages. And that's what I really picked up as we did the story this morning. This was that sort of global appeal. It was like, sorry to remind everyone, it's like when someone like David Bowie died some years ago. The reaction is universal across the ages to what this man contributed.
Yeah, It's such sad news, isn't it, Ashley? I mean, he was just 31 years old.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the thing with One Direction and what made them so huge was it wasn't just young girls who loved One Direction. I remember, you know, like, all the boys love One Direction as well.
Mums, grandmas.
Yeah, everyone.
Like, yeah.
And they were like, they kind of like, every girl wanted to be with them and every guy wanted to be them.
Yeah.
You know, like, they were just the epitome of cool. So, yeah, it was so shocking to wake up and see the news. And I think for me, I want to speak a little bit on the sort of like dark side of social media, because lots of people might know, but for the last few months there's been a lot of noise around Liam, and I think with social media and with celebrity culture you kind of see a lot about people, and maybe clips get taken out of context around people and people form opinions, and there's lots of commentary and it can be very dehumanising. And I think we saw it in what happened with Caroline Flack, and I think we're seeing it now, that a lot of people are kind of realising how impactful words can be. And I think, you know, my heart and everyone's hearts are with his son and his friends and family and even his exes and anyone connected to him. And I think the overall messaging for me would be to, like, remember that these people, no matter how famous, no matter how huge and global they are humans with vulnerabilities and lots of things going on. And I think it's like a really brilliant reminder to just be kind and to be really mindful of the words that you use about people.
Yeah.
Very well said. Ashley, Nick, thank you for joining us. I know you're sticking around and we'll be talking to you more a little bit later on. And we'll be talking about this as well. So do get in touch with any of your memories that you might have. Maybe you came across Liam and you bumped into the boys at some point. As Sian was saying, sharing of those stories, I think, can be a really communal way of remembering in a really positive way the impact that a very, very young man had on a lot of people's lives, and it's been taken too soon.
Absolutely.
Oh, hello. Thank you for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload tons of new content every single day. So hit the subscribe button, like all the videos, and don't miss out. We'll see you in the morning.